by the end of June.
To Senate Foreign Relations Committee Chairman Bob Corker, the president bowed to the inevitable.
Exactly the congressional review that we've been working on for day one.
But to White House spokesman Josh Earnest, it's a bipartisan compromise.
We acknowledge that Congress has a legitimate role to play when it comes to congressional sanctions, while at the same time protecting the president's authority.
While Republicans and Democrats harbor deep doubts about the Iran deal, lawmakers will now have just 30 days to review any plans to lift those sanctions. But if they try to scuttle a deal entirely, Obama can still wield his veto pen. Mark Smith at the White House.
A Dallas area man suspected of killing 2 people and wounding another in Oregon has been fatally shot by police in Texas. Dallas police say officers killed Colby Robinson last night during a chase in DeSoto, 15 miles south of Dallas. A bystander was wounded. Robinson had been charged with 2 counts of aggravated murder in the Friday night shooting deaths of Gary Pham and his sister-in-law, Susie Pham. A Messianic Jewish leader is encouraged with a report that says President Obama is losing his advantage among Jewish voters. Chad Groening has more.
A new Gallup survey has revealed that the approval gap between Jews and all voters is the lowest since President Obama took office, a sign that support for the Democratic Party from this important voting bloc appears to be wavering. After Obama took office in January 2009, 77% of U.S. Jews approved of him, compared to 63% of all Americans. Currently, 54% of Jews approve of Obama, compared to 46% of all Americans. Jan Markell is founder and director of Olive Tree Ministries and host of Understanding the Times on American Family Radio.
I'm encouraged to see that some of them are backing away from Barack Obama because of this Iran deal. And I think what remains to be seen is what kind of a position is Hillary Clinton going to be taking on this Iran deal. And thus far, she's sticking with most of the talking points from the Obama administration.
Markell says Jewish voting in the next election will come down to whether we're talking about a religious or secular Jew.
The religious Jews are going to have an interest and a burden for Israel. The secular Jew is not going to have an interest or a burden for Israel. To be very blunt and to be very honest, their religion is liberalism more than anything else.
And Markell says that means they vote for whoever the liberal candidate happens to be. I'm Chad Groening.
There is a push for New York lawmakers to put warning labels on sugary beverages, but a critic says it will not work.
The Center for Science in the Public Interest and other organizations want New York to require labels on sugary drinks to warn consumers about the dangers of obesity, diabetes, and tooth decay. Jeff Steyer lives in New York and works for the National Center for Public Policy Research. He says this is a, quote, really sad example of so-called public health groups flailing to try to face the obesity problem.
They've tried, as Mayor Bloomberg did, to ban large sodas. They've tried sugar taxes. Public is against them. And they're just flailing to try to find a government solution to a problem that the government ought not to get more involved in and ought to be less involved in. And that's the case of obesity. You can't solve the obesity problem with warning labels, taxes, regulations.
Steyer adds that a little bit of education might be appropriate from the government, but these warning labels on one type of products, sugary beverages, don't make much sense.
The science doesn't support it. And in fact, if you look at the effect of warning labels on cigarettes, which are obviously a very different product than soda, you'll see that they weren't very effective.
Steyer says that sometimes people like enjoying their food or drink even if it does not serve a nutritional benefit.
And you can do so.
100 days, 100 subscribers at $7 will bring FirstAmendmentRadio.com to the minimum level necessary to sustain it through 2015. Go to support.FirstAmendmentRadio.com. $7 a month. Really, you can afford that for our Protestant First Amendment rights and the gospel of the kingdom message. Where your heart is, there will your treasure be also. Go to support.FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com worldwide. Freedom is never free. We need your support today at FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
And we're back for the second hour of Free America here on the American Freedom Network. We need your help, folks. Simple as that. Need your help. Pay the light bill, the phone bill, the roofing bill, the squirrel food bill. Pretty soon we'll have to turn the air conditioner on there to keep the squirrel cool. We need your help. Simple as that. You won't hear shows like this on Clear Channel. Call Michael, 800-205-6245, 800-205-6245. Any amount of a donation would help, folks. Any amount. You can put it on your plastic. You can order a copy of today's show or past shows we've done, other shows here on the network. That helps us out. You can pick up that envelope and address it to KHNC, P.O. Box 1750, P.O. Box 1750, Johnstown, Colorado, Federal Occupation Zone 80534. Your check, your money order, much appreciated. Hate to say it, and my guest this hour will really hate for me to say it, but I guess we'll still take the fraudulent reserve notes. Other currencies, sure, throw them in. We'll pin them on the wall and compare colors. You could even throw in some just weights and measures, the Lord's money. At the very least, tell your friends and family, tune in 1360 a.m. on the Internet at America News Net, AmericaNewsNet.com, and call the advertisers, folks. Let them know you're out there, you're listening, you appreciate their support of American Freedom Network. Doug Lambert, Square Root Construction. He can help you out with the, outside decking, the palatial mansion up on the mountaintop where you can look down upon the masses, or that 8x16 storage shed in the backyard for when the in-laws show up. Call Doug at 303-517-8742. 303-517-8742, SquareRootConstruction.com. Also, programming note. Coming up here, got a new show coming up, Dan Wild About Freedom. He'll be on Sundays, 2 to 5 p.m. So, keep your first Sunday in May there. Dan will be on the air, Wild About Freedom. We'll get Dan on and interview him here before the end of the month and give you a preview. My guest this second hour, former attorney down there in Dallas, Texas, Harmon Taylor.
Good afternoon.
Harmon, we're going to continue on this wonderful, this glorious tax day so that the people can pay for their own destruction.
Yeah, it's a wonderful article that Attorney Barr wrote, and he's got a good discussion on that going. So it's a perfect topic for today.
Yes, because the pastors out there, I'm sure on Sunday there were sermons out there on Renda and to Caesar till it almost make you want to puke.
Yeah, those are very difficult to hear when we understand that this is not a command to kiss Romans, lick their boots.
Yes.
It's exactly what he describes it to be, and it's not a matter of going externally to make that decision. It's exactly as he describes it. It's an internal decision. We pick what's Caesar's, and we pick what's God's. And a little bit of a commercial distinction between the two. Of course, Reese, Rome is the beast that precedes the one we're under right now. And it was a little bit different climate there. Right now, today, we have absolute total commercial discretion in the matter. We are literally commercially picking this day. Choose ye this day. It's a commercial decision today. It really wasn't a commercial decision at that time. It was a decision to make. It was a little bit heavier price to pay then.
Yes, and I read an article some time ago, the history of there, and the Christians, the early church, were persecuted and prosecuted for two main reasons: willful failure to file and failure to register their children.
Isn't that interesting?
part of the willful failure to file was you didn't grab your pinch of incense and burn it to Caesar. He said, no, there's only one God. We can't have, gods many. But here we are today, nothing new under the sun, under a new imperial beast that says, well, we're here to help you. And so we're here to help you, so you really need to pay your fair share to let us help you.
Yeah, that's one of the grand scams going, and I'm going to be bold here. He's taken the understanding, Attorney Barr is taking the understanding that there really is more to this than meets the eye. I know exactly what it is that's beyond the pale there, and based on that rock-solid confirmation of the fact that it truly is voluntary, the legal advice that you'll hear this second hour, and it's legal advice, and that is if you don't know, then presume you're a taxpayer.
Yes.
And if you think you're not, then you better be right.
Well,
there are people who are not taxpayers. There are.
Yeah, well, here's the caution. I've been there, done that. Before you jump out there and spit in the face of the beast, and throw dust in his face, be absolutely certain of what you're getting ready to do.
Yeah, and if one truly does not have in mind the commercial mechanism for that system, then they don't understand it yet, and all they're going to do is create a problem for themselves.
Yeah. We're on our first break. Stay tuned. We'll open the phone line. Questions, comments? Have you rendered to Caesar as is your duty? Yes. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Howdy, folks. Have you ever thought about having your own backyard chicken?
Hear it first on FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net. The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on Internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the Internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com worldwide. Freedom is never free. We need your support today at FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
You can email Harmon, first letters of his first book, We, the Posterity, Voluntary Bondage, WTPVB @earthlink.net. voluntary bondage, commercial activity that we are all, well, we're all presumed to be taxpayers by the beast, but it's voluntary compliance, Harmon. How voluntary compliance.
Yeah, that's how it's marketed to us, and the risk I'm about to get into is that the extremely distant glimpse of the tip of the iceberg is going to be seen as a whole lot more than it is. There's way more information about this system than can possibly be covered in one or a series of radio programs, and the reason is the typical reception is to mix in this sort of information rather than to clear the mind of absolutely everything and start from scratch. So I've talked about tax stuff on the radio before. And the scope of it wasn't enough. The concepts were taken into the mix rather than complete substitute. And
the
people
mix
got
of
in.
everything, the mix of everything out there, and one of the things is, the mix of everything is taking it all and throwing, Title 26, Title 27 in there, and we'll take the Code of Federal Regulations and stir it around. Then we'll take the Internal Revenue Manual and throw in there and stir it around, and we'll stir some more of this over here around, and then all of a sudden
throw in some 16th Amendment Constitution stuff.
Yeah. 16th Amendment, never ratified. Throw that in there, stir that around, and then we let it brew and distill and come up, and we go down there and we tap the little spigot down at the bottom of the barrel, and my God, it's a silver bullet.
Yeah, that's where people start to get into trouble. The thing to talk about, we talked about in the earlier hour, the fact that the choice literally is in the individual to pick out whether it's Caesar or God who is going to get one's allegiance. The income tax system is 100% voluntary, and it's not just in compliance. The act by which one becomes in this role of taxpayer is 100% voluntary. And I was going to address that just really, really briefly. It's the kind of thing that you can't mix into any other school of thought, and so I'm going to take that risk.
Okay.
The concept about taxpayer, let's just start at the beginning. We do not now have and have never had a constitution. Okay, so what kind of system? So what kind of system do we have if it's not created by and therefore limited by that language? And they tell us every day what kind of system it is, and that's federal. Federal does not mean national. Federal absolutely does not mean constitutional. Federal means federal. What does federal mean? It means, in essence, by agreement. This entire system is a bank that pretends to provide governmental services. And a bank, being a commercial entity, functions how? By agreement. What does a federal system do? What is its legal mechanism? It functions by agreement. How then does the income tax thing get started? By agreement. Let's talk about its purpose, and then we'll get into its mechanism. We have, at the end of First World War, a problem between Germany and France. Germany went romping and stomping, and they got beat, and France said, "You're going to pay for that." It's called reparations. And Germany said, "No, we're not." France says, "Yes, you are." And Germany says, "No, we're not." France says, "Yes, you are." And this goes back and forth for a while, and Germany finally says, "Okay." They relent. Ambassadors go home, banks turn their printing presses on, and the printing presses are never turned off again.
Yeah.
So what France is paid with is worthless. France gets paid. France gets the reparations, but it's worthless. That creates all the economic stuff right there in the 30s that produces the circumstance in government that we got that turns into the World War II popular names and societies and all that stuff for Germany. Okay. The lesson that the banking industry learned from that is if we're going to go with a debt system, we've got to know how to take the amounts back out of circulation that should no longer be in circulation. So picture a tub, picture a faucet that's always on because it's a debt system, which means it's constantly being created by debt, by borrowing. Okay, money is debt right now, and the faucet's constantly on. And what is that? That's the borrowing. Okay, so how do we keep the tub from overflowing the way it did in post-World War I Germany? Answer, you have to have a drain. To keep the tub from overflowing, there's got to be a drain. Okay, so how does money come into circulation? By being borrowed. How does it come out of circulation, and what comes out of circulation? Let's talk about what first. What comes out of circulation? The amount of principal that's been paid. If a company borrows $1 million, that's $1 million that comes into general circulation. Okay, they pay $100,000 off. There's no longer $1 million in general circulation. Why? Because there's no longer $1 million in debt. There's only $900,000 in debt. So only $900,000 of that original loan can remain in circulation. Okay, so that amount, the principal paid, has to come back out of circulation or the tub overflows. Okay, so that's the what. What's the how? Obviously, we're leading up to the income tax. The income tax has never been a source of revenue. It's never been for revenue purposes. It's called internal revenue. It's just one more lie. It's never been a revenue-generating mechanism. It has always been a money supply management tool. And it's interesting. We can get a little bit of subtle confirmation on this. The income tax came into being. The cover story is the 16th Amendment. 16th Amendment was never ratified. Bill Benson proved that in spades, and of course it's irrelevant that it was never ratified. That doesn't matter because that's not the mechanism for the income tax. The income tax came into being, and then we get the Federal Reserve Act. First the drain was in place, and then the concept about going to a debt-based system. Now, that's still early. We're talking 1913. We didn't shift over to a debt-based system until about 1965, when all the silver was, the practical majority of the silver. There'll be a caller who come, we had 40% still going, and she's absolutely correct. But the fundamental mechanism of use of silver as a medium of exchange ended in 1965, and we got scrap metal tokens instead of silver to use. And at the end of the day, we're talking about a lead time here of about 50 years. And that's not accidental because that's how these people plan stuff. Very, very gradual changes. So first came in the drain. First the income tax was in place, and then they said, okay, that's in now. So now we can
the income tax, we can't forget, the income tax was sold to the people, the masses out there, that you'll never have to pay because this only applies to the rich. It will never affect you.
And wasn't the first rate something like 2%?
Yes.
Yeah, it really.
On amounts of, like, I can't remember, it was like $50,000 or something.
Yeah, which is a ton of money at the time.
Yes, ton of money.
So
the people, the masses out there looked at that and went, well, okay, yeah, soak those guys. Because we had the union strikes and poor working conditions and the robber barons and all of this. So it's kind of like, well, yeah, let's soak those guys.
And it sold that way, apparently, and they didn't understand what the mechanism was, and they didn't understand what was coming. I mean, who knew? Literally, who knew? Nobody knew. We've got a money system now that's been going for 50 years, and people still don't really understand it.
No.
So it's still the problem that it ever was and designed to be that way. We can just put it off to the mystery that is Babylon, and it's just one more aspect of the things that we should understand and just don't. So we have this money supply management problem because the banks have to go to a debt system. Why? They've got to change the choice of law. Why? Because when we use silver, we're basically in God's choice of law. And it's ironic that the Romans still used silver at that time. The silver is out now, and gold's recognized, but silver is not. Silver is God's currency. With silver comes God's law. With paper comes the bank's law, and they've changed some things. So to get those changes in place, they had to change the choice of law, and they did that by changing the currency. So that is the plan all along. It's a really subtle takeover, but it's not a takeover. I'll get to that in a minute. Talk about voluntary bondage. It wasn't anything except by our full and complete discretion, even though we didn't know we were exercising it that way. So we've got a money supply management issue in the brewing. We've got to get a drain in place before we switch this system over from an asset system to a debt system. And at the end of the day, the fundamental concept that we're looking at is the management of that debt system. So how does that happen? Well, there has to be a way to get currency, get the debt back out of circulation. Has to happen or the tub overflows. So they picked income tax as the mechanism by which to do that.
And that's not working. That's not working very well because what's happening to the debt?
Let's talk about,
personal, governmental, all government.
Let's talk about that. We've got a debt-based system.
Or have they rebuilt bathtubs?
Well, it's always been the same plan. Here's the thing. If everything that were borrowed at face value, if we didn't get fractional reserve banking, if we had just what was out there being loaned as the debt, then we would not have anything in general circulation. To have something in general circulation, you see, it's got to be unpaid. If you pay it, it's got to come out of circulation. So that which circulates today is this debt that cannot and will not ever be paid. It's created that way. The national debt will never be paid because the minute it is in this debt-based system, there will be nothing left in general circulation. It's the debt that circulates. So if we ever paid that off, nothing would circulate. And this is the bank's design. So revenue is never the purpose of the income tax. When they want something to circulate, they borrow it. They borrow it. And to manage the borrowing, they've got to have a drain. They've got a bunch of drains. They've got to have a drain out of the bottom of the tub. Okay. So now let's talk really, 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 really briefly. This is a very extremely distant glimpse of the tip of the iceberg over the horizon. We do not now have and have never had a constitution. We've got a federal system. It functions by agreement. And there are two generic flavors of agreement. Cliffhanger.
Those. After the break. Question, comment, 877-254-7524. Phone lines are open.
You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com worldwide. Freedom is never free. We need your support today at FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The rapture will be canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the left behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
Gold and silver is tremendously undervalued. Global demand vastly exceeds mine supply by more than 60% annually. There is little in the financial world more certain than a coming explosion in the prices of gold and silver. The U.S. dollar continues to lose value and respect as the world's reserve currency. Our nation faces challenges on many fronts, and a day doesn't pass without another economist bringing forth warnings of impending economic calamity. There has never been a better time than right now to acquire physical gold and silver. Discount Gold and Silver Trading was founded on the principles of truth and honesty. We believe in providing a quality product, quality service, and most importantly, competitive pricing. We provide all forms of precious metals, including American gold, silver, platinum, and rare investment and circulated coins. Silver bars, rounds, and 90% silver bags are on hand for the silver investor. Gold self-directed IRAs are available. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, that's 1-800-375-4188.
You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com worldwide. Freedom is never free. We need your support today at FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
You can email Harmon, and he can, he can send you to school on all of this. He's available to do that. So if you're interested in that, drop him an email. It's the letters of his first book, first letters, We the Posterity, Voluntary Bondage, WTPVB at earthlink.net. WTPVB at earthlink.net. We left off, Harmon, with two basic types of agreements.
There's two types of agreements. One of them is called contract, and a whole lot of people have gone nuts on the concept of putting everything into the model of contract. And the gotcha agreements that get us the most don't sound in contract. Here's the thing. We've got a federal system, and yet it thinks it can put people into jail. Okay. Title 18 being a penal code, we can just presume that that language applies because it exists. That's not 100% correct. There are commercial nexus required provisions, even in Title 18. But let's just, for the sake of making clear a distinction, let's just say that Title 18 applies because it's in print.
And okay, Title 18 was thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not. Penal code, right?
Penal code stuff, right.
Okay.
And you picked a couple of interesting topics. We'll come back to them. Theft and homicide are reserved to the states. But what you're talking about is the penal code, and that's exactly right. So that's Title 18. Tax crimes are defined where? Title 26.
26 and 27.
And we don't have penal code stuff in Title 26. What's Title 26? The tax code. Okay, so how can anyone risk loss of liberty in a federal system for language that's not found in Title 18? They have to agree into an agreement of the nature of which a mere breach is subject to jail. And there is a type of agreement for which mere breach is subject to jail, and it's called a trust. There are two types of agreements, contracts and trusts. Trusts are the ones that are the legal mechanism for everything outside the penal code where someone's at risk of going to jail. Now, that's a thing that's about to be abused by a whole lot of people because they think they've got, the answer there, and they don't even have a good beginning on it. But to get to the income tax and to this render unto Caesar concept, we really do benefit by understanding the nature of the agreement that is the income tax. It's a fiduciary obligation. The taxpayer means fiduciary. Taxpayer means fiduciary. It's a fiduciary obligation. How do you get into a fiduciary obligation? There's one and only one way. Purely voluntarily. There's only one way to be. No one can be compelled to be a fiduciary, ever. You can never be compelled to be a fiduciary. The only way you get into it is 100% voluntarily. And so the marketing on this income tax system, and this is the thing that triggered this line of discussion. The marketing is voluntary compliance, exactly based as you introduced it. Everyone's a taxpayer, you're a citizen, and therefore you're a taxpayer, and therefore we just depend on you to tax yourself and send us in the money. That's a lie. Okay? It's a lie in part. Voluntary compliance is a lie in part. Why? Because those who are taxpayers really do need to do that. But the people on the marketing end do not understand the mechanism. They're not going to be taught the mechanism, and so that's what they're taught, so that's what they tell us. They don't know what they're talking about, but that's the line, and so that's what they give. No one has income unless he or she or it, being a business, has first volunteered to be a taxpayer. Who has income? A taxpayer. If you're not a taxpayer, you don't have income. Now, I'm talking semantics here. I'm talking extremely detailed, specific semantics. Okay, these are not generic thoughts I'm tossing out there. They're semantics. Who has income? A taxpayer. So the only people who have an income tax issue are the people who first volunteered commercially, individually, to be a taxpayer in the first place. So it is a lie to say that because you're a citizen, you're a taxpayer. That's not correct. In Rome, it very well may have been related. If you're around here, maybe you are a taxpayer. Tribute is paid to whom? The conqueror.
Yes.
Tribute is paid to the conqueror, the military conqueror. If you've been taken over militarily, then if you're alive, it's because you're owned. You're now owned by the conqueror. You're booty. You're boot. You're collateral in the war exchange. You lost, and therefore you're owned. So tribute is paid to a military conqueror, and the bank never militarily conquered anything in America. It's 100% voluntary on our part. And we've voluntarily bought into the banking system and all the choice of law that goes with it that's being shoved down our throats every day by using its money. We use its money, we buy its choice of law, and this money system is a debt-based system, which means it's got a money supply management issue, and the granddaddy of money supply management tools is the income tax. They market it as something voluntary. They market it as something mandatory in the face of its being voluntary. No one can ever be compelled to be a fiduciary, ever. The only way ever to be a fiduciary is 100% voluntarily. So we're suckered into that. We don't know what that mechanism is, and no, I'm not going to get into that because that's where problems start. That's where one really, really, really has to know what is going on, because when one goes that path and gets into a fight that one doesn't really know how to win, they say, oh, it doesn't work. Yeah, it does work. You just have to know what you're doing from beginning to end. And we've got this mechanism. It takes money out of the system. We're lied to about its mechanism. If everyone understood the mechanism, the banking system would stop overnight. And it's enforced very viciously. Because why? Because they don't want people doing what I'm doing here, which is getting into the belly of the beast. They don't want to talk about the Achilles heel. They don't want people to know. Why? Because then the banking system breaks. And we don't have Mystery Babylon anymore because the money system breaks. That's the control mechanism. And it's not through the accumulation of the amount of it. It's through the choice of law that comes with it. So, rendering unto Caesar, it's 100% our pick. We're lied to about the income tax. It is not just voluntary assessment. It's not voluntary compliance alone. There is voluntary compliance, that's true, but it's not really voluntary. If we've already agreed to be a taxpayer, if we've already entered into the role of fiduciary, we'd better fulfill that duty. More on the other side of the break.
On the other side. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Years ahead of the dominant media, FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net. The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening. Years ahead of the dominant media, FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net.
And we're back. Harmon Taylor with me for this second hour of the show today, this wonderful, glorious tax day yet. If you want to find out more, Harmon's available to, teach you. You can drop him an email, We the Posterity, Voluntary Bondage. That's WT, P as in Paul, V as in Victor, B as in Bravo, at earthlink.net. WTPVB at earthlink.net. You know, Harmon, I got up this morning, I went over and knocked on my neighbor's door.
Yeah.
And I said, neighbor, I'm here to collect the taxes so that I can get my benefits. You know, I'm entitled. So I can get my entitlements. And he said, no. I don't understand. He said, no. I don't know.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe he's a private property person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got a mess or a system here, and the key is it's 100% voluntary from the get. It's enforced viciously so that we don't understand how to look into the belly of the beast, how to hit the target, how to find the Achilles heel. And so people are intimidated and bullied and scared to death when they get into this system so that they don't look into what the actual legal mechanism is. And it works. The people are scared to death of this system. And that's the earmark of the bank.
And that's the earmark. That's the earmark of tyranny.
We've got that too. The thing about lawlessness, the thing about tyranny and lawlessness is it's marketed to us that way. It's marketed to us as something that is, in appearance, above the law. And it's totally subject to the law. We just don't know the law. And that's a problem.
Yes, it is.
So as we get in mind that we're not dealing with a system that's created by the Constitution, and therefore not dealing with a system that's limited by the Constitution, and it's okay at some point in mind to say, holy Toledo, what is that thing? And the answer is it's a federal thing. It functions by agreement. So if we agree to be regulated by this thing, if we agree to subject ourselves to it, and it's an individual thing, it's a commercial thing, then it's going to apply all the power we just agreed to have used against us. That's what we've just asked for.
Well, and we signed up and said, like you said, we signed up voluntarily to be this fiduciary.
Correct. To it. Okay. So it says, you want to sign up here, and here's the deal. You're the fiduciary. We're the beneficiary. Now, perform. Correct. And when we don't perform on a fiduciary obligation, we are, in fact, possibly subject to loss of liberty. And this is every tax protester that's gone to jail will tell you, yes, I've gone to jail. And they'll say it's just fraud, and they'll say it's illegal, it's unconstitutional, and they're confessing they don't understand the legal mechanism yet. And it's hidden right there in plain sight. Right there in plain sight. We've got to go through a rather wicked paradigm shift to get into mind what this thing is and how it functions. The worst step, the hardest step, the highest mountain to climb is the first one. And that's getting into mind the fact we've been lied to about the Constitution. We do not now have and have never had a Constitution. What kept that system at bay? God's money system. How did it keep it at bay? The choice of law that came with the general circulation of silver. Once we got rid of that standard, we picked a different standard, and that different standard turned some fundamental things on its ear. What's one of the fundamental things that got turned on its ear? Let's look at a contract context and look at how we deal with silence. In the olden days, it works this way still a little bit. It hadn't been completely annihilated. But in the olden days, someone would write an offer, and it would just sit there on the desk. And so is there an agreement formed or not?
No.
Correct. Silence at that time meant non-consent. Silence meant non-consent. What is it in this day? Let's jump over the threshold hurdle because I'm still not fully satisfied an agreement can be formed by silence, but it can sure be changed by silence. We have this thing called the Uniform Commercial Code, and it talks about all kinds of agreements, a limited set, but it's a pretty broad spectrum even still. And if we've got two people who are sophisticated in the deal, two people who are in business, the label's merchants. If you have two merchants dealing with each other and they've got an agreement, and the one sends a letter to the other or an email or a fax or a text and says, instead of blue widgets, now let's do green, and there's no response, guess what?
We're going to have green widgets now.
Correct. Silence now means consent. And we sure see that in the courtroom. That's the spot where it shows up the worst. When we need to object and we do not, that's consent. And it's a vicious system. It truly is a vicious, horrible system when we have in mind the concept of individual liberty. But that's the law that we get by going with Mann's, and we're going with the bank's money system. So we bought into it 100% voluntarily. We can never be compelled to change our choice of law. That's an act of war. That's why the kingdom of God will never be set up by war. War is a judgment. God is not going by war to compel anybody into his choice of law. Choice of law is exactly that, a choice. We're right back to the article and discussion of the first hour. Who is our sovereign? Who do we pick? Okay, if we want Caesar, all we have to do is use Caesar's money. Today, that's the Federal Reserve note. If we want God, then we really ought seriously to consider using God's money. The most pure form of that is silver. Gold works, platinum works. The concept is honest weights and measures. When we do that,
bushels of wheat work.
Bushels of wheat, head of cattle.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Finish off today's show on the American Freedom Network.
Howdy, folks. Have you ever thought about
I pledge allegiance to the King of Kings, and to his kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. One holy nation, under Heavenly Father, grace, mercy, justice for all.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host, Melody Cedarstrom, right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, 1-800-375-4188. If you'd like to get a copy of this program, you may subscribe at FirstAmendmentRadio.com for only $45 a month, and you'll receive an MP3 CD weekly of all of our programs. As a bonus, we'll send you a password for our audio archives online. That's a $15 value. Or you may request any month of any program on one MP3 CD for a minimum donation of only $25, or any single program on tape, MP3 CD, or CD for only $15. You may do all of this online at FirstAmendmentRadio.com. Just follow the instructions to make a donation or subscribe. You may also adopt an hour of your favorite program. Please don't forget that most of the programs on FirstAmendmentRadio.com are listener-supported. Don't do Internet? Then call 559-781-3773 and we'll be honored to help you. Thank you from all of us here at FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com worldwide. Freedom is never free. We need your support today at FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
So my guest this hour, Harmon Taylor. You can email Harmon the first letters of his first book, We the Posterity, Voluntary Bondage, WTPV as in Victor, B as in boy, WTPVB at earthlink.net. This wonderful tax day that, and there's a lot of folks out there that, that, what I want to say here, that, they want to be free, they want to have liberty, but they're going after chasing down the rabbit trail, the yellow brick road of, research and stuff that would let them break into jail.
And a lot of breaking into jail and a lot of breaking into jail momentum. A lot of the breaking into jail momentum starts with the concept that we're dealing with a limited government created by a document called a Constitution. And it's a wicked paradigm shift to get into mind that simply never happened.
Because they will search the Title 26, 27 and the Code of Federal Regulations and the Internal Revenue Manual, and hoping to find the what?
Silver bullet. That's what they're looking for. And of course, the problem there, they don't understand that they're dealing with a federal system. Okay, the mind accepts that begrudgingly, but a lot less begrudgingly once they're satisfied that there truly is no Constitution and has never been one. If we look at Title 26 as law, then we're already lost. We're already lost. Why? If we look at Title 26 as law, then we argue it as law, and it might or might not apply. Title 26 being the proposed trust agreement, when argued, say, well, this provision says this and this provision says that. What's the judge hearing? Well, it sounds like an agreement you've already entered into.
Yes, because, well, you're arguing the terms of the trust.
Amen. I mean, it's pretty simple when you get down to it. If you start throwing the code at the court says it's all I needed to hear. You volunteered. Now, pay it. And it's an agreement sort of thing. It's an agreement that does not have to be entered into at the time. For example, one doesn't have to be a taxpayer to be charged criminally. Let's look at Al Capone. I'm not going to be an apologist for him. I think he needed some counseling. I think he was a violent individual. And I think the movies that depict him that way are accurate. Okay?
He was a murderer.
Yeah, he was a murderer. He was a vicious guy. He needed counseling. He grew up with bad parentage or something. Okay. He was never a taxpayer. At that time, at the time of Al Capone, there was one and only one way to become a taxpayer, and that was to file a return. That's been changed since then. There are other ways to volunteer now, lots of other ways to volunteer. And so the game is constantly changing in this regard, but he had never volunteered because he had never filed. He said you can't have a legitimate system, a legitimate tax system based on an illegal money system.
Yes. Well,
anyway, he was suckered into being a taxpayer. There you go.
Harmon Taylor, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Coming on. And, folks, remember, the question is not, do you know the Lord Jesus Christ? The question is, does he know you?
Gold and silver is tremendously undervalued. Global demand vastly exceeds mine supply by more than 60% annually. There is little in the financial world more certain than a coming explosion in the prices of gold and silver. The U.S. dollar continues to lose value and respect as the world's reserve currency. Our nation faces challenges on many fronts, and a day doesn't pass without another economist bringing forth warnings of impending economic calamity. There has never been a better time than right now to acquire physical gold and silver. Discount Gold and Silver Trading was founded on the principles of truth and honesty. We believe in providing a quality product, quality service, and most importantly, competitive pricing. We provide all forms of precious metals, including American gold, silver, platinum, and rare investment and circulated coins. Silver bars, rounds, and 90% silver bags are on hand for the silver investor. Gold self-directed IRAs are available. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, that's 1-800-375-4188. Hear it first on FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net.
American Family News, I'm Chris Woodward. The U.S. and Cuba plan to hold talks about two of America's most wanted fugitives. The State Department says Cuba has agreed to talk about fugitives, including Joanne Chesmart and William Morales. Chesimard escaped from a U.S. prison where she had been serving a sentence for killing a New Jersey state trooper in 1973. She was granted asylum by Fidel Castro. Morales is a Puerto Rican nationalist who was wanted in connection with bombings in New York in the 1970s. A man is in custody after landing a small helicopter on the U.S. Capitol lawn.
It made for a strange sight, a tiny